Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something I find absolutely fascinating, how the actual physical environments of the ancient world basically wrote the DNA of human belief systems. We usually think of religion as this purely abstract theological thing, but as we're going to see, the dirt under their feet, the deserts, the rivers, the mountains, literally shaped what early humans believed and how those beliefs grew. Let's get right into it.
To really wrap our heads around this, we've got to rewind the clock. Picture this. Thousands of years ago, way before modern science or anything close to civilization, early humans are looking up at the night sky. They're facing the sheer, terrifying mystery of existence, and they're asking one massive question. Who created all of this? And, well, without the scientific tools we have today, they had to look directly at their surroundings for the answers.
Which brings us to Section 1, the birth of belief, fear, and nature. See, early humans lived in a world that was just packed with terrifying, unexplainable things. To cope with sudden lightning strikes, violent storms, or even just the pitch black of night, they started to believe that invisible powers were pulling the strings behind the scenes.
And here's where it gets really cool. The specific environment they lived in completely dictated how they worshipped. Think about it. If you're out in the scorching desert, your absolute biggest threat is drought, right? So survival literally means praying for rain. On the flip side, in lush farming communities, your whole life depends on crop yields, so naturally you worship the rivers that keep you alive. And what if you're up in the freezing, high-altitude peaks like the mountains of Tibet? You're respecting the vast sky and the life-saving power of fire. The physical landscape totally dictated the spiritual focus.
Let's switch gears and look at how resource-rich environments change the game in Section 2, India, Spiritual Rivers.
It is actually mind-blowing that several of the world's major faiths share the exact same geographic cradle. Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, they all evolved right here in India. The physical backdrop of these deep, vast forests and massive flowing waterways like the Ganges and Indus rivers, well, they provided a super stable setting. They were perfect for ancient universities. These became massive centers of learning where world-altering belief systems could really put down roots.
Because they were surrounded by all this lush, fertile nature, the theological focus turned deeply inward. Actually, think about it this way. Because these folks weren't fighting a brutal desert every single day just for a drop of water, they actually had the time and the peace to develop incredibly complex philosophies. They zeroed in on concepts like karma, deep meditation, the cycle of rebirth, and achieving inner peace. The environment literally gave their minds the breathing room to explore the inner self.
Now watch what happens when we flip the script. When we move from the lush rivers of India over to the unforgiving, arid deserts of the Middle East, the entire spiritual focus of humanity turns upside down. We go straight from this quiet, inward focus on inner peace and rebirth to a strictly external, structural focus on divine law and justice.
Which leads perfectly into Section 3, Deserts and One God. Let's break down exactly why this massive shift happened. The Middle East back then was an incredibly tough place to live. Just surviving meant navigating a deeply unforgiving landscape, mostly relying on nomadic tribes tied together by fragile trade routes. And it was right here, in this brutal environmental crucible, that the world's major monotheistic faiths emerged: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The fact that these three massive religions share the same geography? Yeah, definitely not a coincidence.
You see, this environment wasn't some lush forest made for quiet meditation. It was a dangerous, wide-open expanse where community, rules, and structure were quite literally matters of life and death. In a harsh desert where resources are scarce, you absolutely need strict cooperation to survive. So it makes total sense that these emerging religions would emphasize singular authority, one God, along with very clear moral laws and objective justice, just to hold their fragile societies together.
That brings us to Section 4, Asia's search for harmony. Over in China and East Asia, early philosophers were observing a completely different environment.
In this region, they were watching how the natural world operated around them and tried to map human behavior directly onto those rhythms. And this created a really fascinating dual focus. On one hand, you had Confucianism trying to establish strong ethics and social order, kind of mirroring the need for societal balance. But on the other hand, Taoism taught that people needed to live in direct, fluid harmony with nature itself. Again, the answers to their biggest questions were deeply, deeply tied to what they saw outside their front doors.
All right, moving on to Section 5, the global spread. We've talked a lot about how geography shaped these beliefs, but how did they break out of those local environments to become the absolute global powerhouses we know today?
Well, those highly localized answers to life's mysteries basically hitched a ride on massive human networks. Just imagine merchants braving the grueling Silk Road, huge migrating populations, or marching armies carrying their geographically shaped beliefs across borders. Through trade routes, wars, mass migration, and the vast reach of empires, faith suddenly became mobile. It spread like wildfire.
To put that into perspective, Buddhism flowed out of the rivers of India straight into East Asia, mostly by following those bustling trade routes. Meanwhile, Christianity kind of piggybacked on the massive, unmatched infrastructure of the expanding Roman Empire to push its message way, way beyond its desert roots. And Islam moved incredibly fast across multiple continents, fueled by this potent mix of empire expansion and deep, far-reaching trade networks.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with something to chew on regarding your own life. We've just explored how profoundly physical geography, the deserts, the rivers, the mountains, shape the origins of human belief. So look around you today. If ancient landscapes so powerfully dictated what humans believed back then, how is your immediate environment, your city, your digital landscape, your community, shaping your worldview right this second? It is definitely something to think about.